You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Den sei nach Strömungen i Uncensored.
What's up, Marks? Thanks for coming back. This is episode 4 of the Angry Marks Rewind podcast, brought to you by AngryMarks.com, your number one source for pro wrestling and mixed martial arts news. I am Rowan Unruh. Follow me on Twitter at Rowan Unruh. And joining me once again, Aria Whitner. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I come out of retirement yet again. I really am the Terry Funk of wrestling podcasting, I guess.
And I certainly appreciate you coming back for a second episode in a row. We are in the process of trying to find a more permanent co-host. I have a few irons in the fire. I don't want to always take up Aria's time. I certainly appreciate her willingness to come on and to help out because she is truly very knowledgeable. She's a great wrestling fan. And like I said, I've got a couple of contacts in the mix. I can't really say who is going to be your permanent replacement, but I will know probably by the end of the month.
It's Mark Madden, isn't it?
How did you know?
I just took a wild guess. Or what's that guy's name that does like all the podcasts with like Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard?
Conrad Thompson.
Yeah, he's going to be your new co-host.
Oh man, I wish. I love Conrad.
Okay, so you're the one.
Conrad. What's wrong with Conrad?
I don't have a problem with him mostly because I don't listen to those podcasts. But you know,
I think he plays a great straight man for interviewing the stars. He's like the Gene Okerlund, I think.
Alrighty.
He has to keep the talent, on task.
How about calling up Cornette's old co-host, Alice?
Alice? No, I think she is so bitter to this business. Maybe Jim Cornette kind of spoiled her for everyone else, but I don't think she wants to do anything to do with wrestling ever again. So
she had such a soothing voice. Like, she could have been reading audiobooks on tape and sell them.
I would listen to her read an instructional manual for like a vacuum cleaner. Oh, I'm getting pop-ups here again. So, like I said, wait, what? Did I just mean to say that?
I was just going to say, this is already the greatest podcast ever.
Wait, Alice is a lovely lady. However, like I said, we are in the process of hopefully getting someone ready for episode 5, but if we don't, if you are listening to this, if you're within the sound of my voice and you think, hey, I would like to be able to do that, I can do a much better job than him. Aria's pretty okay, but Rowan's a bit of a dork, but I can do better than him. Then drop us a line if you are passionate about the pro wrestling business back in, up until about 2005 when my interest kind of took a landslide. Then hit us up. Let us know if you want to be a regular co-host on this show. And we can get the ball rolling. If not, we'll go to my backup plan.
Which is just keep begging Ari to come out of retirement every week.
Aha!
And see how well we can guilt trip her.
I can't believe you cracked my code.
Well, I did watch a lot of Gravity Falls, so, my mystery solving is peaking right now.
I think one of the issues that I have is that I put a lot of unrealistic goals as to how much content I wanted to put out. So I thought maybe once a week is a little bit ambitious. So it might be a couple of weeks before you get episode 5, but fear not, it's going to happen one way or another.
I can't wait for episode 6, which I think is going to be your WrestleMania preview show.
I've been getting multiple requests from Stevie J to do Black Saturday. And okay, here's the thing. Stevie, if you're listening to this, I promise to do an episode of Black Saturday if you make a bio page for me on the staff link at AngryMarks.com. I've been doing this off and on since 2014. I like to think I'm already part of the staff, so I want my own biopic or my own bio page on the main website.
To be fair, I got mine by writing my own bio, so, you know.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to do that.
Just talk about how great you are and throw a picture in with it, and, you know.
Does it have to be a picture of me?
Preferably.
I'll just, I can put up a picture of one of my cats, because since they're far cuter than I am.
Whatever floats your boat. I mean, I'm not making that final call, but, I imagine Stevie won't mind.
So this week, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to March of 1997, WCW's third annual Uncensored event. This happened from Charleston, South Carolina. Just a couple of stats here. Now, this is according to the March 24th, 1997 Wrestling Observer. This show drew 9,295 fans, of which 7,640 paid a total of $101,184. Now, this at the time was actually a pretty big deal because even back in the WCW and NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions did run this building a number of times, but this was actually the very first time that they drew more than a $100,000 gate. This building apparently had a capacity of about 10,000. There were 360, just shy of a sellout, and this was actually a really impressive figure because 1997 was, I think, probably the best time to be a wrestling fan. You were right in the midst of the Monday Night Wars. The NWO, which was the hottest angle that WCW had ever done, was in full gear. DX was a couple of months away, so you didn't have that crossover just yet. And in the middle of this wrestling war, you also had a challenge for these companies to book buildings, because wrestling was as hot as it ever has, so booking venues became quite a challenge. And so they originally apparently didn't want to book this venue. I think, but when they did book it, they hadn't had the NWO angle just yet. They were booking months and months into the future. But also, this was also only 1 month away from ECW launching their first pay-per-view. Also this month, you had the WWF with their big March pay-per-view, WrestleMania 13, which was highlighted by the Bret and Austin angle.
And actually, this show did more pay-per-view buys than WrestleMania.
Yeah, think about that in hindsight. You probably get probably the greatest WrestleMania match of all time with the Austin Bret heel turn, and this Uncensored show outdrew that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just goes to show that really the NWO angle was the hottest thing in pro wrestling at the time, even more than Austin, because he hadn't gone full face yet, and so his push was just getting ready to come.
And this was also, you remember, the WWF, mostly thanks to Shawn Michaels and his knee injury, his career-ending knee injury. They spent a year building up to Bret versus Shawn at WrestleMania 13, and then Shawn got injured a month beforehand. They had to throw that plan out the window, and all of a sudden we have Undertaker versus Sid as the WrestleMania main event.
Yeah, now, put your booking cap on for 1997. Had we had the Bret and Shawn rematch, what do you do with Austin?
That's like one of those great questions. It's like, I think he was supposed to wrestle Bulldog because they were doing the Bulldog Owen split, and so like Furnace and LaFon probably would have gotten the tag titles, and then Bulldog would have faced Austin, and Owen would have done Christ knows what. But in a way, even though they had to sacrifice WrestleMania being WrestleMania, it all ended up working out better because they ended up with the entire Hart Foundation instead. Like, I guess they could have had Bulldog turn back heel a week or two later, but that would have really been useless. I think it ended up working out better for the company in the long run.
I think a good spot then would have had to be for them to have done Austin and Undertaker, and then do a split of Bulldog and Owen, with Bulldog going babyface. I don't know, I guess we'll never know. This Uncensored, it did get a lot of local press in the area. Some of it was pretty embarrassing. There was an article in the Atlanta Constitution which ran a 9-paragraph review to the pay-per-view in its Sunday sports section, complete with a Rodman photo. Now, we should make mention that this was a pay-per-view that was basically created and focused around Dennis Rodman. He had done some work with WCW in 1995. WWF was also courting Rodman, and I think the estimate that I got was that WWF had offered Rodman $1 million, give or take, for a 3-shot contract. And because Hogan was a friend of his, Rodman decided, well, I'll go to WCW instead, and I think the number that WCW gave him was 1.5. The one thing this pay-per-view had that WWF didn't at the time was a lot of mainstream exposure because of a big-time mainstream sports star. And, you can say what you want about Rodman now, but in 1997, this dude was probably one of the most recognized, most polarizing, popular, not just athletes, but just celebrities. He would come to, you never knew what he was going to do. He'd show up to book signings in a wedding dress. He would, he'd start beefs with other celebrities. So he decided he was going to hitch his wagon to WCW. And because of this, they were getting a lot of mainstream press. In this particular article with the Atlanta Constitution, they kept calling it WWF, even to the point where they quoted that Rodman was training at the WWF power plant in Atlanta, and that the WWF had a television show called Monday Nitro on TNT that was delivering good ratings. Outside of that, it was pretty much a burial of the business.
Tremendous. Did you notice that when you pull it up on the WWE Network, it gives that little preview on the side? Did you read that preview?
No.
Well, it listed Eddie Guerrero versus Dean Malenko for the Cruiserweight title. And if that wasn't good enough, then the opening video package for the show listed Prince Iaukea versus Ray Jr. for the Cruiserweight title. Just pointing this out, neither match was for the Cruiserweight title.
Whoops.
By the way, I know this is like one of those big nitpicks. There was some guy sitting in the front row, right on camera, wearing a blue button-down long-sleeve shirt, and he had his face painted up like Sting, and it just looked so stupid. And he was sitting there the whole night with a big shit-eating grin on his face. I'm like,
it's another one of those examples where some office worker didn't have time to go home and change before he went to the wrestling show, so I'll do my makeup gimmick in the car, or on the bus perhaps. So the show opens. The opening graphics to this show, it almost gave me epilepsy watching this, because everything was just so fast. They were flashing still shots all over the place. There was graphics. I can't even explain it. All I know is that it hurt my feelings watching it. It made my brain hurt.
Words will fly at the screen really quickly.
So some of the stats from the Observer. This card got a total of 42% thumbs up, 44% thumbs down, 13% in the middle. The best match poll went to Malenko and Eddie Guerrero, followed by a distant second of Ultimo Dragon and Psychosis. Guerrero Malenko got 76% of the votes. Harlem Heat and Public Enemy was second place with 18%. So, Jesus. So the gap between first and second was quite lengthy here. The worst match vote got 67% was the main event, and 24% was the martial arts match, which I know you are very excited to talk about the martial arts match.
Not the martial arts match. I can't wait to talk about that one.
So we get at the broadcast booth, we got Tony, Dusty, and Bobby. Dusty and Bobby were in such fun. They were in such a fun mood tonight. I can't wait to get to them.
They were fucking useless, especially Dusty.
Oh no, I couldn't disagree more. I thought Dusty. Say what you want about his promo ability, he was having so much fun at this show. He was probably drunk as fuck, but
I'll believe that. Him and Bobby were probably drunk as fuck. But it gets annoying because Tony Schiavone has this reputation of not giving a fuck and all this crap you always hear about him. And meanwhile, him and Tenay, because Tenay was on for a few matches, like they're actually trying to call the match. They're actually trying to explain what these moves are. and you have Dusty and Heenan shouting them down, laughing at them, mocking them for, calling the match, basically. It's like, you sit there and wonder, like, how the fuck does Shivani, like, I wouldn't want to fucking sit there for 3 hours and try to do my job if every time I did, I was being shouted at.
Poor Tony. Tony, and more so, I think, Mike Tenay, he was questioning his life choices during this show. We get Tony trying to explain the stipulations of the main event, and I don't think neither the announcers nor the ring announcers were really sure of what the complete rules were. They said,
I made a note because I was waiting the entire show for them to actually say the rules. It took them until 1 hour and 13 minutes into the show during the Buff Bagwell-Scotty Riggs match for them to finally explain all the rules.
And even when the main event started, we didn't even know all the rules because they fucked it up because they were inconsistent. So the main event of this show was a 3-team elimination match. It was Team Piper, which consisted of Piper, Jeff Jarrett, Chris Benoit, and Mongo, versus Team NWO, which was Hogan, Savage, Hall, and Nash, and Team WCW, which was Lex Luger, the Giant, and the Steiner Brothers. So if Piper's team wins, Piper gets a cage match with Hogan. If WCW wins, all the titles are returned. So the World Tag Team titles and the World Heavyweight title.
And the Cruiserweight title.
And the Cruiserweight title. If Team WCW wins... Wait.
By the way, it's not just that they had
the
titles. The entire NWO then could not wrestle for 3 years.
Oh, you there? Did we lose you?
I'm still here. Are you here?
Yeah, sorry, your volume just went down a lot. We got a Skype jump here. No worries.
Well, yeah. What I said was that if WCW won, the NWO couldn't wrestle for 3 years.
See, that's not what Tony said in the opening. Tony said 36 months.
Well, wait, 36 months is 3 years.
Shit. Edit. I'm a fucking moron.
See?
Well, see, that's why they can do that. I just assumed that they were going to... Oh, God.
It helps. Once they said that, you knew they weren't going to win, so it doesn't matter.
We got Rowan's math lesson here, people. 36 months is 3 years. So I figured
it had something to do with the U.S. to Canadian conversion rate or something.
Well, that's right. You need to congratulate Canada for finally going to a 24-hour time system.
Congratulations, Canada. Can we send you Donald Trump?
No.
We took Bryan Adams, and we took Celine Dion, and we also took the Quebec Nordiques. You can't take Donald Trump from us.
No, that doesn't seem like a fair trade.
You're right.
You're going to have to throw in a couple draft picks. 36 months, I thought that was kind of an arbitrary amount of time. Why 36 months? The NWO hadn't even been in existence for that long.
I don't know, because the millennium was 34 months away.
It's such an outlandish amount of time that it doesn't make any sense. I know Jim Cornette would often say, if you're going to have a stip that actually means something. You're not going to have, on an indie show, a $50,000 battle royal. So that's why when Jim Cornette ran shows, all of his stips were something that people in the crowd could believe. It's like, oh, you could win $500 gift card from Toys R Us, or I don't know, something like that.
Oh my God! I really hope that $500 Toys R Us gift card.
Okay. This is no word of a lie. I was at an indie show in Winnipeg here, and they had it was a tag team gauntlet, and the winning team there was like 7 teams. The winning team at the tag team gauntlet got a $25 gift certificate at Salisbury House. And none of you listening to this, except if you live in Winnipeg, knows what Salisbury House is. It's this little ma and pa type diner. And it's basically a chain restaurant within the city of Winnipeg. And the winning tag team was going to get a $25 gift card or gift certificate for Salisbury House. Not $25 each, mind you. The team had to split it.
They got to have dinner that night. They may have had to, pay the tip out of pocket, but.
There are a lot of indie shows where the winning wrestlers, they get gas money for the night.
Yeah.
So this idea of them being suspended and fined for 3 years, that completely telegraphed what the finish was going to be. I should go into this saying that I had never actually seen this show before. You said you could review this show without even watching it because you'd seen it so many times.
By the way, we should also mention that if the NWO wins, they get to challenge for any title they want at any time. Basically, a never-ending Money in the Bank briefcase. And
they never specified the length of time that this win would give them.
It doesn't matter, and I bet. Do you remember any of their quote-unquote cash-in matches?
Yes, because actually, when we get to the World Television Title match, the NWO angle is going to come into play with that.
I'm honestly surprised that you remembered their one match.
I do remember that. So we're going to start off this pay-per-view with, like I said, the very best match of the night, Eddie Guerrero and Dean Malenko. This was for the U.S. title. Eddie had just recently won the U.S. title from Diamond Dallas Page at the previous Starrcade.
It was a tournament final, but, it was beating Page at the end.
When they come out, I guess the whole premise of this match is that Eddie and Dean had been feuding for quite a long time, and Dean started to accuse Eddie of being a, quote, rule breaker. And the announcers made note of this, saying that Eddie used to be a fan favorite, but now his attitude is becoming a rule breaker. So they're using a lot of Apter language here, which I thought was quite amusing.
Apter was at ringside, so at least he'd approve of it.
Eddie starts out with a side headlock, a lot of punches. Both of these guys are going very aggressive. They recap Eddie's involvement with Syxx, earning the Cruiserweight title at Super Brawl the previous month. Each guy is stomping each other in the corner. The fans are booing Eddie quite a bit, and they turned on Eddie pretty quickly. Dean was not supposed to be the favorite in this, but Dean was getting cheered for doing the same moves that Eddie was doing just the previous minute that he was getting booed for. Dean starts working over Eddie's left leg with a half crab. It launches him over the top rope. Dean beats Eddie with the U.S. title belt, not a disqualification.
Well, this was a no disqualification match.
Did they make us known of that? Was that going in? Oh, okay, maybe I missed that.
During one of those graphics flying at your face moments, they said it was a no DQ match, and then there was like one moment that might have caused a DQ normally. Eddie
hits Dean with a rock bottom. He hits a low dropkick on the knee. Eddie starts to angrily sneer at the crowd. There's a weird spot with Eddie jumping off the top rope just so he could hit Dean in the back of the knee. That looks strange. Jumping off the top rope, doing a high-flying attack to a lower body part, that just looked weird. We get, in typical WCW fashion, we have them cutting away from a pay-per-view match that we have paid to see so we could see the NWO, Hall, Nash, and Syxx leaning over what at the time was an unidentified man lying face down unconscious. Turns out it was Rick Steiner. And
there was a commotion backstage, we were informed.
Oh, Nash seemed so concerned that Rick Steiner had been laid out. So
I want to point out, all those three were the only three people there. They go back to the ring, then they go back to them like a few minutes later, and the medics are there to take Rick away. And the only people still there are Nash, Hall, and Syxx. Rick's teammates in the match, Luger, Giant, and Scott Steiner, apparently did not give a fuck.
They're in their dressing room. They're like, wonder where Rick is. Well, I'm sure he's just running late.
He's running around barking outside.
They didn't bother to check with anyone. They didn't bother to look at a monitor to see what was going on.
Nah, that's not important.
Yeah, so they're dicks for not caring about their teammate.
By the way, do you have any idea where Eddie tore his pec in this match?
They said it was with about 4 minutes left in the match. I think it might have been when Eddie botched that sunset flip.
Possibly?
So out of that, Malenko hits a release German for a 2. We get Malenko hit Guerrero's top rope frog splash, but he pulls Eddie up at 2, but he decides he doesn't want to pin him there. They fight back and forth. Eddie then puts on Dean's cloverleaf. At this point, Syxx comes out with his Sony Cinderblock Handycam.
And he really is the Cruiserweight champion, by the way, in case anyone cares.
Right. He wasn't booked on this show.
Nope.
I always loved it when the guys would come out with camcorders to record their match, not realizing that the show was being recorded on, high-end cameras.
Oh my God, who used to do that in TNA?
Alex Shelley did that. I think Brian Pillman also did it briefly. But yeah, Alex Shelley would come set up his little camera on his tripod.
Yeah.
And TNA booking.
Yes, I know. And that wasn't even Russo. That was Scott D'Amore.
Hey, I won't have you besmirch the good name of Scott D'Amore.
Just saying, that was a weird angle, and they're on, national cable television with these expensive cameras filming it wasn't high
HD
def at the time, but it's like and meanwhile Alex Shelley's filming his match on a camcorder.
So 6 comes out. He grabs the U.S. title. This starts sort of a tug of war between Eddie and 6. They're fighting over the belt. In the melee, 6 drops the camcorder in the ring. Dean grabs it. He waffles Eddie with it, voiding the Sony warranty on the camcorder.
Mm-hmm.
And Dean gets the 3 count, and he is the new U.S. champion at 19 minutes and 14 seconds.
I like to think 6 tried to return that video camera and went to Best Buy or whatever at the time and said, I have no idea why it's got an Eddie Guerrero-shaped head print on it.
Why is there a mullet on this camera?
I've got no idea,
I picture him going to, like you said, Best Buy, and the guy behind the counter is that kid from The Simpsons that works at every fast food place.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. The warranty has been voided. I'll get your taco out of the deep fryer. Oh!
That was really good.
This was, I thought, like I said, this was voted the best match. I thought this was probably the best, if not tied, for the first best match. The cutaways didn't really deter from the match because that sort of led into the main event, but that could have been done between the matches, I thought.
Oh yeah, definitely. And they actually did the same thing at Spring Stampede a month later with a Rey Mysterio match. So go figure. And to follow up, by the way, we mentioned that Eddie tore his pec. He'd be out for 3 months. And I guess so it wasn't really a full tear, but he still had to take some time off. Dean Malenko, by the way, while we're in 1997 mode and talking about randomness, Dean Malenko would become the most random person to ever be number 1 in the PWI 500 that year.
That was usually reserved for the top guys, because you look in previous years, and I always looked forward to having the PWI 500 come out. That was my Bible. And so when it was released, I was like, oh, who's number 1 this year? Oh, Diesel.
Yeah.
Who's number 1? Oh, Bret Hart. The world champ. And then the year that Malenko got number 1, I was like, wow, this is actually real now.
It was real. I think Misawa was number 2.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Do they still have that?
Yeah, because actually I think Okada got it last year. It took 25, 30 years, but they finally put a Japanese wrestler as number 1.
They finally got it right, huh?
Yep.
They didn't put John Cena number 1, and they put him at 1 year, I thought.
Cena was number 1 like 4 times or something, I think. By the way, so Mean Gene plugged the hotline. Now, did you do any research into who he was talking about when he said that a WCW star had been fired?
I didn't know at the time, but I did do some research. Do we want to let the cat out of the bag now?
I think we can. I think enough time has passed to
We're not going to be telling any tales out of sorts here.
No, because Jacqueline wasn't on the show at all, so we're not spoiling anything there. Disco Inferno was fired.
Yeah, so pretty much all night, Mean Gene is doing his hotline plug. He's saying that there is a major WCW star who's gone. He's out of here. He's history. He's toast. And we'll tell you why. As it turns out, it was Disco Inferno. And I guess the reason why he was let go was because he did not want to do a program with Jacqueline, which would have resulted in her beating him at this show. That match was scheduled to take place at this show. Disco didn't want to do it. A lot of the boys in the back were really behind him, saying that, why would, he shouldn't be doing jobs to women. And he was subsequently let go for that. Now, they would eventually bring him back, and that same program would be done at Halloween Havoc this same year.
Yep.
So he lost 6 months worth of pay for something that he would just end up doing anyways.
He actually almost became Rockabilly, allegedly. There was consideration of the WWF was going to hire him to be in the role that Rockabilly was in.
Do you really think at that time in '97 that there would have been a place for Disco there? Is this just a rumor, or is this just...
It's more of a rumor, I think. I don't know how legitimate it was, but I mean, there wasn't really a space for Rockabilly either.
So then Disco could have gone on to become Rockabilly, who could have then gone on to become Badass Disco Inferno.
Mr. Disco.
Mr. Disco. He would have then feuded with The Rock at SummerSlam '99.
How different life would have been if Disco Inferno took over Billy Gunn's career.
And then what does Billy do?
He loses to Jacqueline on a WCW pay-per-view.
Big jacked up Billy Gunn losing to little tiny Jackie.
Yeah. Billy Gunn was like 6'5", 6'4" or something, losing to like 4'11" Jacqueline.
Now, speaking of Gene, and speaking of being the straight man, he had the enviable task of interviewing Roddy Piper and the Horsemen in this next segment. Gene comes in, he plugs his hotline, he then brings Piper into the shot, and Piper is just, I don't know he was on cocaine during this interview, but he was all over the place. He insinuated a bunch of gay jokes about Dennis Rodman and the other Horsemen. He accused Benoit of being an alcoholic. His attention was not at the match.
No.
Mongo comes in. I think Piper's interview sort of magically transposed itself over to Mongo because I thought Mongo gave a really good interview here.
Well, compared to Piper, everyone did a good interview on this show. By the way, here's an amazing stat for you. And even with this stat, I'm about to tell you that 1997 WCW is still one of my favorite years of wrestling ever. With that said, including World War III, Mongo was in 3 pay-per-view main events that year.
Oh, shut up. You're kidding me.
I mean, it was this show where it was a 12-man, basically a battle royal. He was in War Games, and then he was in World War III.
Well, but if you're going to use that logic, you could say that, Hard Work Bobby Walker was in a WCW main event.
Yes, and thus he should not have sued WCW because he was in a pay-per-view main event.
It ruined his push.
Yeah. Anyway,
we could have had Roadblock.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
God.
Ultimate Dragon. Do you have anything else you want to say about this?
Yes. Right. As soon as the interview segment ended, Tony Schiavone says, "We don't need to look at Deborah. We don't need to talk to Deborah. We just need to look at her." So that's some great '90s wrestling sexism back then.
And was actually pretty accurate.
Good job, Tony. I mean, he's not wrong. But who was it? We're watching, I think it was Splash, the movie, and I'm watching it, and I was like, oh man, Daryl Hannah, she's so attractive, and she's so nice to look at, but her 2 problems are the moving and the talking. Like, without that, she's golden. We should just have a picture of her in the bottom left-hand corner, so we can just look at her. And that's how I feel about Deborah McMichael.
Oh my God. And this is really off topic now, but you remember when they did the all-women season of NXT?
I did not watch a single episode of that, but I recognize that it exists.
As the only person in the world who watched it and was perversely entertained by most of it, at one point they did a 6-woman tag. It was like the Bella Twins, AJ, Maxine, and like basically everyone who was eliminated and the Bella Twins. And Michael Cole, who was just starting his heel turn at the time, announced that the reason why there were 6 women in this match was because what they lacked in quality, they made up for in quantity. And that's like the all-time burial of the women's division. Oh, Jesus.
So we got Psychosis.
Welcome to my rate podcast on the Rohan's on Fire.
Later that day in HR. Moving along, we've got Psychosis versus the Ultimate Dragon. They were consistently calling him by the wrong name his entire WCW tenure.
They usually went back and forth, honestly. It's like half the time he was Ultimo with an O, and half the time he was Ultimate, like he was Jim Hellwig. And
the Ultimo Warrior.
The Last Warrior. The first time ever these two did battle, and actually, this is a battle between two men that if you forgot that both of them were in WWE at one point, no one would be surprised.
I know that they were both, that would have been around 2004, right? Because that's kind of when my WWE viewership was at a minimum.
Yeah, they weren't there at the same time, mind you, but like Dragon was there for a year, and then Psychosis came in after ECW One Night Stand as the Mexicals, and he was there for like a year and a half.
I know that Ultimo Dragon's WWE peak was WrestleMania 20 when he tripped on his own cape.
Poor bastard. On that,
which you won't see on the network. For some reason, they deemed Ultimo Dragon too important to show that he is human and makes mistakes, so they edited out his cape mix-up.
They go to a long shot of the crowd.
Like I said, no capes.
Why is that man wearing a cape?
Because he's a superhero, goddammit.
Sonny
Ono, who was he was the king of this show. Or at least in this match, he comes to the ring and he's, of course, playing the stereotypical Japanese tourist. He has a camera with him. Again, it's the size of a bread box.
I think it was bigger than Six's video camera.
Because according to WCW, only Japanese people take pictures. And this newfangled thing called the internet was just getting really popular, and Tony's like, hey, he's taking pictures with one of those digital cameras. We might see those pictures on the internet.
Now, did you catch what their website was?
I assume it was WCWWrestling.com.
Or in other words, World Championship Wrestling.com.
The WCW.
Yes. Thank you, Bret Hart.
Anytime. So this is another really fast-paced chain wrestling to begin with. Mike claims that this is the first ever singles match because they'd work in different companies in Mexico. As it turns out, this was their second match because Dave Meltzer has to be right and he has to correct everybody.
That's the job.
That's the job. I believe he worked these two guys worked in Mexico sometime in '96. So this was their second. As far as mainstream pay-per-view or major television, this was the second time they had worked together. A series of really stiff kicks by Dragon, exactly what you get with a Dragon match. Someone from the crowd started chanting, USA, at Sonny Ono. And I'm looking at this, and the only American in this match is the referee.
Yes. And I thought Psychosis, for the most part, really sucked in this match. Because at one point, early on, Dragon runs up the ropes for a what a maneuver, but Psychosis is more
for no reason, by the way.
Yeah, because Psychosis was more than halfway across the ring, so Dragon had to jump down. He then goes for an enziguri, and I don't know if he was supposed to miss the enziguri, so this may have been his fault, but Psychosis did not move his head, and Dragon went about 3 feet off to the side of him, and they immediately went back to it, which screams, hey, we fucked this one up.
Yeah. Yes, like he started to run up the middle rope. He ran across the corner onto the other side of the ring, still sort of running up the ropes, and then just jumped off and just kept on working.
Yeah. Psychosis did his top rope leg drop and dropped his foot right into Dragon's mouth. I think Psychosis was trying to kill him. At one point, he did the leg drop to the floor and landed heel first into his ribs.
I think he was trying to break his own ass, too.
He didn't quite pull a Johnny the Bull, but,
Dragon hits an Asai moonsault, and Tenay blows Dragon's cover by using his shoot last name, because the move is pretty much named after him. Dragon distracts the referee, and then Sonny Ono hits a series of spin wheel kicks that looked really cool, and my only problem with this match is that spot. Not the fact that Sonny Ono kicked him, but the fact that his kicks look better than anything from either guy in the match. So if you're going to be a manager and you're going to cheap shot your opponent, do it the way Bobby Heenan would have done it, or the way Jimmy Hart would have done it. Just soccer kick him in the gut as he's coming up, make it look like a cheap shot. Don't have the coolest moves in the match and take the shine off the participants.
When Psychosis wasn't screwing up and when Sonny Ono wasn't stealing the heat, this was actually a pretty good match, and Dragon looked fantastic. I miss watching that guy, and
I love Bobby's line with, one of his kicks started straightening his horns.
Dragon hit, I don't know, was it a tornado DDT? It's like, I don't know if it was a fuck up or what, but it's like Dragon was on Psychosis' shoulders, spun around, and like, I guess he dropped him like a DDT, but like it looked like some sort of fucked up move.
Yeah, the closing sequence was, Dragon hit his running Liger bomb. He then hit that top rope spinning DDT, and then a Tiger suplex for the win. So he hits 3 straight moves. The win didn't seem to come out of anywhere. He hit 3 straight moves and then pinned him at just over 13 minutes. So again, this was a really good match. And after the match, Sonny Ono gets on the camera. The thing that we saw in WCW a lot was guys walking to the corner because that's where the camera guy was, and then cutting like a 5-second promo after the match, and that's what Sonny did, challenging Syxx for the Cruiserweight title somewhere down the road.
Mm-hmm. Then we had an angle that I still remember. I could have not watched this show since 1997 and still remember this angle. It was the angle that made DDP a star. He'd already started to getting a good babyface reaction, but this program specifically propelled him into the main event scene. And the angle started with Randy Savage. He wouldn't acknowledge DDP's existence. So DDP's out here once again to challenge Savage to a match. And from there, Savage comes out to the broadcast position, which is like probably 50 feet away from where Page was. And Savage, all of a sudden, he goes from disrespecting Page and Page is a loser who's not even worth knowing his name. All of a sudden, he respects Page. Page is the effing man. And why is that, Rohan?
Well, first, he called him brother about 87 times. Gene brings out DDP, Page starts calling out Savage. Savage and Liz both come to that sort of like elevated interview platform that you'd see on Wrestling Challenge, and they had a copy of Playboy Celebrity Centerfolds or whatever. And Kimberly Page was the centerfold. And all of a sudden, Page is the man and Savage is just putting him over, brother, because, hey, look what you get to come home to every night. And Page was like, don't go there, brother, don't go there. It's like he was kind of upset that Savage had a copy of this magazine and was pointing out that he had a hot wife. This makes no sense.
I guess in a way, because, it made more sense later when Savage implied that he banged Kimberly, but that's not what they said here. Instead, here it was just like, hey, you've got a hot wife who's in Playboy, and I would figure since Page, if you look, like they had a picture, they had the centerfold of Kimberly, but in like the upper right-hand corner, that you couldn't see it very well in that picture, but the upper right-hand corner is a picture of both Page and Kimberly. So you would think, hey, Page already knows that his wife's in his magazine.
Right. This isn't one of those situations where it's like a hacked phone cloud type thing, Mm-hmm. Page sat down and had he knew about the photos. He posed for them. They published them. Now he's mad that Savage is ribbing him for this, if you'll pardon the pun.
Ogling his wife.
Savage says, "Oh, bro, I was walking through an airport, brother, and I saw this magazine, and I looked in it, and it was Pamela Anderson, who, by the way, I banged because we did Baywatch together. So she's an old girlfriend of mine. Meanwhile, Liz is standing right there. In storyline, they're supposed to be together, but she's happy as a clam, knowing that Randy Savage screwed some other woman. Savage puts DDP over for having a hot wife. At this point, Kimberly comes out, and she's all timid and crying. And at first I thought, well, is she embarrassed that she did this magazine? But as it turns out, and the NWO had tagged her with the spray paint.
Yeah.
So Paige goes to console her. Savage then attacks Paige from the back, attacks Kimberly. We should also point out that when Gene first brought DDP out, he made mention of the fact that Rick Steiner was now out of the main event. Who's going to replace him? Is anyone going to come to WCW's rescue? Paige does not one time acknowledge, hey, I could be that fourth guy. Hey, I'm already going to be feuding with Savage. What better way to kick off the feud than for me to get a hold of him in this elimination match? So they completely dropped the ball on this one.
Especially, they could even have had Paige say, you're damn right I'm going to be in it, or some shit like that, and then this is your angle to get him right back out of it, because Savage KO'd him with a freaking can of spray paint, but, they still carted him off on a stretcher, so they could say, oh, well, we wanted him. Because it would also make WCW look less stupid, because you had a locker room with 50 people in it, and not a single person came out, and that's an argument for later, I guess. But
how hard could it have been to have Paige be the fourth guy on Team WCW, and through some chicanery, have Savage eliminate him from the match, thus building up the heat there?
Or have the Paige and Savage go over at the same time and fight to the back.
That took us 0 seconds to think of.
Yeah. But
so,
hey,
Kimberly looks great, but she is a lousy actress.
Mm-hmm. Well, too, but that's.
Dusty Rhodes with a valuable life lesson here, as he says, "Don't get your family involved in this business, baby."
Mm. Yes.
The guy with 2 sons and a daughter-in-law in the business. And then, oh my God!
Oh God, here we go.
I'm gonna let you take this. This is the martial arts match.
Way back in the early to mid 90s, there was a video game called Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat! Johnny Cage! Sub-Zero!
It has been remade 5 million times and is probably on the Xbox 360 or Xbox One and PlayStation 17 or whatever they're up to these days.
The Sega Genesis.
Yeah, and it's like, but way back when, on my Sega Genesis, I had this game of Mortal Kombat, and you had like 6 or 7 fighters to choose from, and it was a fun little video game. And it had blood coming out of people. It was basically Street Fighter with blood. And it was so cool. And he had characters like Sub-Zero, who just picture Glacier as an actual video game character.
Come here!
Yeah. And it's like, and Eric Bischoff, who had a son named Garrett, must have been playing said video games, because Eric had this brilliant idea to basically do the Mortal Kombat storyline, or do a Mortal Kombat storyline here. And I'm 12 years old at the time. I'm a video game geek. I'm a wrestling geek. And so this is the coolest thing freaking ever. It's Mortal Kombat in wrestling. And not only that, it's a martial arts match. It's Mortis. And in Mortis's corner is James Vanderberg. And to bring this 21st century for you, it's Canyon with Father James Mitchell, who at this point still had all 10 fingers in his corner, versus a block of moving ass. Glacier.
Now, how did you enjoy the build-up for Glacier?
Oh my God. They had to have spent minimum 3 months building up Glacier in 1996. And I don't know if, in real life, I don't know if he got injured or something, because it just kept going on for so long. And finally he debuted, and it's like, okay, he's throwing a bunch of kicks. That's nice.
I'm doing some quick research here, so keep talking.
Now, this match was a martial arts match, and we're informed that means that you can win by pinfall, submission, or knockout. So that's the way you can distinguish the martial arts match from the regular matches.
I can't tell you the number of old-timey Jean-Claude Van Damme karate movies, martial arts movies. Me being an aficionado of 80s martial arts movies, I can't tell you the number of pinfalls I've seen in these matches because it happened so often. So they were right on track here.
Speaking of Jean-Claude Van Damme, they tell us that Mortis has been trained in the blood sports.
Yes. Yes, Mortis is a blood sport competitor. I don't remember seeing Tong Po or Frank Dukes in WCW.
Ah, Dukes, like put up your Dukes.
Yeah. with Forrest Whitaker, the greatest bumbling secret agent that there ever was.
Oh God! And by the way, they used great martial arts moves in this match, like a big back body drop and a plancha, which I don't know. Maybe I just don't watch enough martial arts movies, but I don't remember back body drops and planchas.
Okay, so because just as an aside here, according to Wikipedia, Glacier began. His name was Ray Lloyd in April of 1996.
Mm-hmm.
They started advertising this guy with vignettes. He did not debut until October of 19. Sorry, let's see here. His debut occurred on September 9th, 1996.
5 months later.
Sweet Jesus. Well, it's a slow build, brother. You got to set the table.
Oh yes. They used, like I said, those big great martial arts moves. Glacier dropped face first on the ring apron, which, as you know, is the hardest part of the ring.
And it is often also used in martial arts fights.
Yes. Speaking of Billy Gunn, because we don't do that enough on this show, Mortis in this martial arts match used the Fame Asser.
Yes, and Bobby said, "Oh, I never seen that move at all. That seems like a brand new move." Not realizing that he was in the WWF when Marty Jannetty used that move and almost killed a guy. And it was the biggest lawsuit in the company's history up to that point.
Yes. And then they dropped Owen Hart from a ceiling and it got dwarfed. Glacier.
there was a spot here. There were some kicks by Glacier. Mortis hit a kick to Glacier's ear in which he cried, "Ow, my ear!"
Glacier, he didn't hit this move, but twice he went up top. And we were talking about great top rope moves earlier. He went up top and went for the flying chop to the top of the head.
He hit the collie chop.
Now, before someone says Ricky Steamboat did that move in the 1980s, which is true, it just is completely absurd. And also, do not compare Ricky Steamboat to Glacier.
And Mortis is supposed to be this mysterious kind of, I don't know if he's supposed to be like a supernatural being, but we hear him in the ring in his thick New Jersey accent. "Yo, he ain't nothing." Did you catch that?
Oh yeah, he held his arms out at one point. I was ready for him to scream, "Who's better than Canyon?"
Let's see here. So Glacier hits a vertical suplex on the floor. He starts chasing Vandenberg out of the ring, and he just gets wiped out with this awesome-looking baseball slide dropkick by Mortis. That looked like it sucked. Mortis hits, he hit that slingshot clothesline that Hangman Page uses. Mortis hits his Fameasser. You hear James Vandenberg yelling, "Remember Taipei!" We're supposed to know what that means. I guess that was when he was in Malaysia learning the blood sport.
Yes.
Mortis hits a Northern Lights suplex and hooks the leg for a 2. Glacier tried the collie chop, and Vandenberg's interference backfires. Glacier hits the cryonic kick for the win. I didn't mark down the time on this, but during the celebration, Glacier and Vandenberg are jawing back and forth, and Glacier gets hit by Mortis's Harley Quinn stick, and then Vandenberg calls someone out to help beat down Glacier, and we get the debut of a giant athlete who at this point is unidentified, but it was Wrath, the former Atom Bomb. And I marked out.
He moved from 3 Mile Island to Mortal Kombat Land, and he helped Mortis double-team Glacier. He, at one point, used the standing head and arm choke, which made me remember the good old days of Samuel Shaw. And beat out Glacier with the Uranage.
I got to put you over for using a Sam Shaw reference in 2018.
It's sad that was the first thing I thought of when I saw the standing head and arm show. Like, that was such a horrible finisher.
I'm imagining a young Braun Strowman back, when he was probably in his, early teens saying, I'm going to use that one day, and it'll get over.
Yes.
So this match I thought actually wasn't bad, but they didn't need to build it as a martial arts match. That took so much out of it. I thought it could have just been a regular match. Other than that, it was dumb.
And you know what else that happened? If you were really paying attention, you saw, but they didn't mention on camera. James Vandenberg stole Glacier's helmet.
Oh no!
Yes.
Isn't that not the source of his power?
I think it was like some sort of weird Oriental helmet that he got from his master or whatever.
From his sensei.
There's a reason Mortal Kombat fights had a 99-second time limit.
And they weren't even shoot seconds. It was a speedy clock. Well, I was just going to say, being the parent of a child who's done martial arts for the last 10 years, even my son who, he was watching me watch this, and he's like, that looks fake. And I was like, you're right.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I'll be shocked if you remember either of these things. However, let's put it to the test. Which of these two things was dumber? And these are things that legitimately happen on WCW television. If you think I'm making it up, just go on YouTube. I'm sure they're both there.
Let me put on my thinking toque.
So which was dumber? Kaz Hayashi buying Glacier's gear off of him because Glacier wanted to be a serious wrestler? Or in 2001, they started airing the Glacier vignettes again, saying that he was coming back, and the only person who was excited for him was Norman Smiley.
Oh, man.
Do you remember either of those things?
I do. This is one of those things where if I were to watch this now, I'd be so embarrassed if anyone saw me watching it. I would have to say the Kaz thing would have been dumber because Kaz was already a pretty good worker. So there was no reason storyline-wise for him to have his Mortal Kombat Halloween costume.
And especially since they were sized to fit Ray Lloyd, and Kaz Hayashi's
was giant.
Good 4 or 5 shorter than him. And
well, Kaz is going to grow. He's going to grow into it.
Oh, yes, because he is a child, you see.
Right. I can picture Norman Smiley being the type of character that he was, being legitimately excited about Glacier, so that does not seem as far-fetched. Speaking of things that were dumb, they recap the Outsiders causing the Steiner brothers to get into their car crash. They had video footage, probably with X-Pac's camera before Dean Malenko voided the warranty. They're driving down this country road, and for some reason, the Steiners are driving a car right next to them, and they end up running them off the road. They take a big car flip, and the Steiners are seemingly dead in their car crash, so they're morons. And the Outsiders just decide, oh, we better get out of here. Even though we have video proof that they caused endangerment of a motor vehicle.
Not only do we have this video of it, a few weeks earlier on Nitro, they're the ones that provided the tape.
Right.
They gave the tape to WCW to show them breaking the law.
Right. They didn't give the tape to, say, law enforcement, which, by the way, Doug Dillinger was a legitimate former law enforcement officer, and even he said that storyline-wise, this is stupid. Why would they do this? But this is WCW, and that's what they do. And then Tony says, well, they'd rather settle it in the ring. Sorry, Tony, that's not how the law works. We get, in a strap-on match, Buff Bagwell versus Scotty Riggs.
A what match?
We get the... Well, did they call it an Indian strap match, or did they just call it a strap match? Because I want to be politically correct here.
A strap match, but I could swear you said they had a strap-on match.
So Buff Bagwell comes down the ring, and they got the sweet jazzy NWO B team music playing. And while the music is playing, and while the commentators are talking, Buff decides to cut a promo in the entranceway while he's walking, saying that he, quote, doesn't care if he wins or loses. Why are you in this business?
Because he is Buff, and he's the stuff.
And he is the stuff.
Yes.
So Buff comes down. Riggs is still using the American Male's entrance music. And how would you describe the American Male's entrance music?
I don't know if it's better or worse if you actually know the lyrics, other than, the 87 times you say American Males on it. Because I looked this up. Now, the American Males were supposed to be baby faces that girls were supposed to go wild over and want and be after. The lyrics to the song are, when you see them coming, you better run for cover. Girls, you don't need a weekend lover. American Males. If they want to talk to you, you better not listen. You might wind up in critical condition. Ha ha, American Males.
That sounds like a recipe for date rape.
It does. It sounds like these two baby faces are going to assault you if you sleep with them. What the hell is Jimmy Hart thinking?
I don't know if this is better or worse than Ken Shamrock last week.
Oh, God, no, Shamrock was better.
So the American Males broke up in November of 1996. We were robbed of the American Males because they broke up when Buff joined the NWO. Buff comes down. He's wearing his official NWO stripper choker, which is appropriate. And Buff is concerned that this strap is not a legal strap. What?
They probably went to the South Carolina State Athletic Commission and was like, this strap is not the appropriate thickness for this match. And I'm just going to say, there was one amazing strap match in WCW history. This was not it, but it wasn't for a lack of trying, because it actually was decent, all things considered. Sadly, I think the fans were more into this than they were on anything on the show so far.
These two guys strapped the shit out of each other. And
see, I disagree. Like, maybe I just wasn't watching it close enough. Riggs was whipping Bagwell like Bagwell owed him money. Bagwell, I think, was whipping the mat, because you never heard it slap Riggs' body. It always sounded like he was hitting the mat with it.
I think Riggs knew where his push was going to go, and so he was going to get his money's worth out of this strap match. During this match, Dusty is still blabbing about the Kimberly Playboy magazine, and he starts talking about bags of cement and how Dusty was in typical rare form here.
Well, it's Dusty's. How rare form could it have been?
The highlight for me was, and Bagwell did this in a lot of his matches with Riggs. Riggs is selling, and Bagwell gets behind him, grabs his wrist, and mocks the American Male's clap. Yes. Like Riggs is some sort of marionette. That always makes me laugh.
And then Riggs back kicks him in the balls.
Oh, he just sacked this poor fucker. And the crowd is just dead for this. They don't care about any of this. Buff goes for a cover, and when the ref doesn't count, Buff and Randy Anderson get into a shoving match. Buffy is yelling, I'm sorry, and he looks at the camera, I'm really not.
The finish saw Bagwell backdrop Riggs over the top rope and did the hangman spot to choke Riggs out. And this was not your normal strap match, four-corner chain match finish where the babyface and the heel crawl to each corner. They each hit the first three corners. Then you have the big struggle for the fourth one. No. Bagwell choked him out, and then
he was dead.
Yeah,
he choked him out. He had died. He ceased to be. He lay unconscious in the ring. Bagwell casually and methodically strolled to each four corners, hit the top turnbuckle, and won.
Hitting the last one with his ass, by the way.
Yes. So that finish was completely anticlimactic. I think this match only went about 6 minutes, and it was 4 minutes too long. We get a backstage interview with the NWO. All four of them are standing nice and orderly, as if they were taking their school class picture. And all four of them were sitting there, and they were all oogling the Elizabeth magazine, making all sorts of lewd and inappropriate comments.
There was they were actually talking about what Dennis Rodman could wear during the main event, and it's like, we really needed this promo so these guys could theorize over what Dennis Rodman was going to wear to the ring. Which, by the way, he wore an NWO t-shirt.
Yeah, this warranted about 4 minutes of TV time.
Yeah.
We get the Tornado Tag match, and this is Harlem Heat versus the Public Enemy. This was where Dusty was at his absolute best. He was loving life. He would have done this. He would have commentated this match for free.
What the fuck happened to him? Like, at one point, where the hell is it? Let's see here. By the way, Sherry, who's in Harlem Heat corner, was the second best worker in this match, and she wasn't doing that either.
But she was laying in some heavy leather for here.
I had to rewind 2 times to make sure I didn't miss something. Johnny Grunge picked up a trash can and hit Booker T with it. This is a spot, if you've watched wrestling in the last 21 years, you have seen this spot 5 bajillion times. I don't know if this may have been the first time Dusty Rhodes had ever seen that spot. It's possible. I mean, I don't think so, because the Public Enemy had been in the company for a year at this point. So, but I mean, it is possible. However, Dusty began uproariously laughing, nearly falling out of his...
He lost his shit.
For Booker 30 seconds.
Booker takes a trash can lid to the top of the head. His body stiffens. He goes into rigor mortis. He does the big nasty plunge. And this is the funniest thing Dusty Rhodes has ever seen. He's laughing so hard. And he says, "Oh, he laid his old tired ass out." And then Bobby was laughing at Dusty laughing. And poor Tony is just trying to maintain order. He knows it's funny. He was laughing through the whole thing, too.
Poor Tony is thinking about his paycheck, like, oh, God. Can I get a raise out of this?
Is this worth it? Everyone's hitting everybody else. Sherry is probably hitting everyone harder than anyone else. She's killing Rocco with punches and the trash can lids and toilet seats. And they go to the split shot. You know how, you get the two guys pairing off and they go to different parts of the arena. And they do the split shot. And I always hated the split shot. And if we ever do an episode of World War III episode,
oh, God.
that was the peak of annoyance, because the screen is already small enough, but then you get 3 smaller screens and you have to squint to see what's going on.
What you need to do is, and I mean, I don't know how we could pull this one off, but if you do a World War III episode, you gotta have 3 of us, and it's gotta be a video podcast. And you gotta have like 3 of us in tiny squares on the screen and just talking over each other.
Right. We need to have three sets of commentary teams here.
Yes.
So they put
my
the
brother wants to take part on the side.
So we get Booker. He gets thrown into the front row. They put a trash can over Booker, and they start punching it. And Dusty laughs. He says, "I used to do that to my little brother."
That's what little brothers are meant for.
Harlem Heat and Sherry, they gang mug Rocco. Tony refers to this as nutty. This is a nutty match. So Stevie Ray and Johnny Grunge, they fight off camera for about 2 minutes straight. Rocco tries the Undertaker old school on the top rope, but he gets crotched. Sherry takes a garbage can shot to Rocco. She misses Rocco. She hits Stevie Ray,
Yes.
and Stevie just completely no-sells and just keeps on going.
Because I don't think she was supposed to miss, because she swung it like a baseball bat at Rocco's head, and Rocco has a good-sized head, and she missed. He didn't duck. He didn't move out of the way. She just missed by about 3 feet and accidentally hit Stevie Ray.
And Stevie Ray, being such a professional, just shook it off, said, it's okay, it was an accident. She then accidentally hits Booker with the trash can. This time Booker goes down. Public Enemy put Stevie on the table. They do the big double senton right through the table. This is when Jeff Jarrett and Mongo McMichael come down, and they nail Rocco in the back with the briefcase. Booker then hits the most dangerous-looking Harlem Hangover I've ever seen. He literally did a front flip and landed ass first right on Rocco's face with all of his weight.
Makes you wonder, what the hell did Rocco do to these people to get this beating that he got in this match?
And then about a year later, they would come to WWF, and the Acolytes, who were exchanging faxes with Harlem Heat, he says, these guys aren't good workers, kill them. And they did.
Oh, yeah. Don't tell the Acolytes to kill somebody, they will kill them.
So Harlem Heat wins in a tremendous, I don't even know what you call this. The point is, Dusty and Bobby had the greatest night of their life during this particular match.
It was Plunder Mania 97. 95 minutes after Rick Steiner gets laid out, Team WCW now is with their first appearance on the show, and I think, did it look like Luger and Giant, or not Luger and Giant, but Giant and Scott Steiner both just got out of the shower? They were soaking wet.
They have had to have dumped a gallon of water on themselves. Steiner's already doing incoherent promos. My brother's been taken away in an ambulance.
Yeah, he said it was the first time he ever saw his brother get stretchered out, which, if you remember, he wasn't even there when it happened. So he wasn't even there to watch his brother get stretchered out.
He didn't see it. Lex does this promo, and he's ranting incoherently about society being anti-establishment as a whole.
And I think Luger Giant how to do promos, because Giant did that thing Luger did, that you talk really quietly and then suddenly shout some words.
Like Sid. I always loved when Sid did that, because he was so quiet, because he was the master of the world.
I think the WCW Power Plant trained everyone to do these promos.
All right. We get the World TV title match, Rey Mysterio versus Prince Iaukea. Let's backtrack to the rules of the main event, shall we? It's been established that if the NWO team wins, not that I'm giving a spoiler or not, they get to contest for any championship they want at any time. They already had possession of the world title, the tag team titles, and the cruiserweight title. So you're telling me that Team NWO is like, okay guys, brother, we gotta win this, brother, because then we can go after the world TV title held by Prince Iaukea. This is the one thing that we're missing from our group. And
they did not send Elizabeth after Akira Hokuto.
That's true. However, 2 weeks after this, on Nitro, I will give a spoiler, the NWO did win, and Macho Man Randy Savage challenged Prince Iaukea for the World TV title. So this stipulation actually paid off.
Well, one time it paid off, and the ironic part of this, and we'll get through this, because I've also got a comparison that's going to raise your eyebrow. Prince Iaukea was the World TV Champion. Over on the other channel, rookie
I know where you're going with this.
was the Intercontinental Champion. And to be perfectly honest, and I know people are going to want to reach through the computer screen and strangle me when they hear me say this, they were both about equally as good in the ring at this point. was Ikea and The Rock. The difference is The Rock was able to... The Rock, by the way, worked his ass off to get better anyway. But The Rock also had a shit ton of opportunities and all this crap to improve. And WCW did shit with Ikea, and he pretty much did nothing after this until he became Prince in 2000.
The artist formerly known as
Prince Ikea, yes. And then not only that, to continue the weirdness of it all, 2 weeks later, or whatever day it was that Savage challenged Ikea, I'm pretty sure that on Raw that same night, Rocky Maivia defended the Intercontinental title against Bret Hart.
I remember that. It was either Bret or Owen, because I know that Owen won the Intercontinental title from Rocky in an April edition of Raw. I don't remember which week it was, though.
No, the one I'm thinking about is Bret, because it was like, on one channel you have your Polynesian-looking upset champion facing all-time Hall of Famer Randy Savage, and then the other channel you have your Polynesian upset champion Rocky Maivia facing all-time great Bret Hart for the Intercontinental title. It was just really screwy.
So this is a match where it was the only match of the night that they had announced that there was a time limit. And Mike Tenay is just drilling into us that, well, because it's a pay-per-view, we're going to extend the time limit from 10 minutes to 15 minutes. So remember that.
Yes. This was like when Steve Corino used to do the New Japan commentary, and listening to his commentary, you could predict the winner of the match like 8 times out of 10, because he always drilled what was going to happen over your head. And so when there was a time limit draw, you knew about it because he wouldn't shut up about the time limit. And that's what this was. Regal used to, like, every one of his TV title matches was always a time limit draw. He never beat anybody. And this match, you have Ikea, who's really green, and Ray Jr., who has had pay-per-view matches at this point with Dean Malenko, Jushin Liger, Ultimo Dragon. Now he's wrestling fucking Prince Ikea in what was easily the worst match review up to this point. And this was dull, was a poor choice for the semi-main event. I literally wrote down nothing until we got the bell ringing. The time limit had expired.
Oh,
now,
so
Ron,
what you're telling me here, Arya, is that 15 minutes had elapsed, right? Because it's a 15-minute time limit. What do you mean no?
No.
It's a 15-minute time limit. Those are the rules of this professional wrestling contest.
This match, with the special extended time limit, it was a special one-time only match with an 11-minute and 58-second time limit.
Well, that's not 15 minutes.
It is not. I went to school, and even they told me that 11:58 and 15 minutes were not the same amount of time.
See, that's less time than the advertised time limit. They owe us 3 minutes and 3 seconds. 4 seconds.
Yes. Yeah. 2.
Now, in that 11 minutes and 57 seconds, there was some very impressive-looking spots by both guys. This was a case of Ray really just trying to carry this green kid, make him look good. I think WCW's intention when they first got him was to strap the rocket on him, give him some wins over some high talent, like some high-class talent, which he did. He won the TV title from Steven Regal. In previous Nitros, he had successfully defended the title. Ray hit a couple of really cool-looking split-legged moonsaults. He hits a quebrada for a 2. Ray tried the top rope sunset bomb. He tried to fire up the crowd, but even this crowd, who generally, like, everybody loves Ray, this crowd was not having it. They were tired. They were waiting for the main event. There's nothing these guys could have done. This could have been an audible by The Office, just saying, hey, this match sucks. The people aren't into it. Let's go home early. So they went to go home early. They ring the bell, but then Ray, so the quote-unquote time limit expires. They're ready to go to the main event. The crowd doesn't know how much time is left because no one is giving them any sort of time cues. So the match ends, and Ray gets on the mic saying that he deserves more time. It's like, why do you deserve more time? You knew what you signed up for. You signed the contract, you whiny little masked bastard. The rules are for the world television title, not the pay-per-view title. So the ref decides, hey, this is uncensored. Let's restart the match. And I had my stopwatch ready. And I thought for sure they were going to go 1:41, because that seems to be how long they go.
They went 1:45.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Ikea countered Springboard Rana into a sunset flip for the win. So the finish made Mysterio look really bad because he bitched about needing more time. He was given more time. He got what I consider, if this were real, an unfair advantage, but he still couldn't beat the guy that everyone still considers a jobber.
Mm-hmm. And in the future, Prince IK would go on to become a cruiserweight champion and eventually unemployed. And I don't know what happened to this Ray fellow. Did he ever amount to anything?
I don't know. It's just the other thing that the Prince would end up he would go on to feud with Chris Jericho, who would famously call him Prince Nakamaki. These are the random things that I remember. But no, I don't know whatever happened to this Ray kid.
Oh, I don't know who Rey Mysterio Jr. is anyway. Like, he's not anything like Rey Mysterio from WWE. You know, he's bigger too.
They're completely different guys, obviously.
Yeah.
Or the Rey Mysterio from New Japan that worked this morning.
Yes. This morning as we're recording this. Like 3 weeks ago when you're listening to it.
That's right. Because it's the beginning of, or it's the middle of July right now. Anyways, we get a promo. We get a promo for the next event. It's Spring Stampede. It's a vignette of the Horsemen on horses in a western town.
And they're arguing.
I don't know what this is. Bobby Heenan had a great line about Arn Anderson wearing a cowboy hat, and he said they got holes big enough for the donkey ears. Because apparently Arn Anderson has large ears.
Indeed he does.
We get our main event of the night. We get Michael Buffer announcing. The rules are a very War Games type situation where you start out with a couple guys, it goes 5 minutes, in 2-minute increments. Guys from every team come into the ring, not just one at a time like in War Games, but every team comes in. So we start off with 3, and then 6, and then 9, and 12. Eliminations occur when the guy is pinned, knocked out, submission, or they just added this rule over the top rope. This was not established in the pre-show or any mention of this leading up to this.
Yeah.
Buffer.
It was a way for 10 guys to do a job without actually doing a job.
Yeah, they reiterate that if the NWO lose all their titles, they can't wrestle for 3 years. I actually wrote here. I wrote here, if the NWO lose their titles, they can only wrestle for 3 years. Before, Tony said 36 months. Don't take math lessons from me, people.
If Piper wins, then he gets Age in a Cage with Hogan, which, by the way, they did anyway, obviously. And if the NWO wins, they get their eternal Money in the Bank briefcase.
So the opening segment was Chris Benoit, who was coming out to Piper's bagpipe music that looked like a bad creator wrestler in a video game.
Yeah.
Tony's still unsure about what the real rules are. We get Scott Hall representing the NWO and referred to by Michael Buffer just as Giant. Not the Giant, just Giant.
And tell you what, if you never watched this match before, and you never did, right? You had no idea really what happened and everything.
I knew that the NWO had won the match, but I had never actually seen the match before.
Okay. So when you saw Giant coming out with the miserable puss look on his face, how quick did it take you to realize this guy's going out in the first 5 minutes?
I knew that they were going to dump him early, and I think he knew he was going to go out early because he didn't bother to fully dress for the match. his singlet kept falling down, and it looked like some middle-aged woman losing her bra strap. His singlet just kept falling over.
This was a svelte giant, too. Like, I don't know what he actually weighed, but it's like, I don't think he couldn't even have been in the 4s. Like, he's probably like mid to high 3s at this point.
Mm-hmm. So the NWO has been running roughshod over WCW for, the last couple of months. Giant comes in. His first thing is to attack Benoit.
Mm-hmm.
Benoit jump Hall to kickstart the match. Giant, he's taking his sweet-ass time coming in. It's basically Giant going 1-on-2 for the whole segment. Giant chokeslams Benoit. Hall broke up the cover for some reason. Giant went for a pinfall, and Hall decided that, no, I don't want you. You're not supposed to pin the guy. Giant charges Hall in the corner. Hall tucks his shoulder, and backdrops Giant out. Giant is done. So his night ended with, in under 5 minutes.
Yes. When you think about why the NWO was so over and so popular, even though they were the heels, this was basically a 7-on-4 handicap match that the heels were the 4, and they pretty easily won.
They walked through their opponents like nothing. How are we supposed to, how are we supposed to boo these terrible heels who are doing such a valiant job fighting against the odds?
This, I believe, is the one and only time that Chris Benoit, Steve McMichael were in a match with Hulk Hogan. Not that, by the way, they never touched Hulk Hogan, but this was the only time they were in the same match as Hogan.
The next 3 guys we get in the next period are Jarrett, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger. All 5 guys are just randomly brawling. No eliminations during this segment. The third period, we get Mongo, Kevin Nash, and Scott Steiner.
And
Hall
here's the thing. They did not stop the clock for the entrances. So it's like, and it's 2 minutes at this point. So the clock would count down to 0, and then you'd have all 3 people making individual entrances. And by the time they all got to the ring, it was down to like less than a minute to go before the next group of people. So it pretty much was, at this point, a series of ring entrances.
Hall takes a butterfly powerbomb from Scott. Scott hits a belly-to-belly on Nash. He hits an exploder suplex on Savage. NWO guys are bumping all over for Scotty. Nash eliminates Jarrett with a big boot, so we still don't have a pinfall as of yet. We're still doing the over-the-top rope rule. Mongo gets eliminated by Scott Hall.
In the opposite of every Scott Hall Battle Royal spot. Because every Scott Hall Battle Royal that he's in, he goes for the Razor's Edge, and he gets back-dropped out. Well, this one was the complete opposite.
Mongo tried to give him a pile driver, so he puts him in the pile driver position. Of course, he's standing right facing the outside, right next to the ropes. So he's getting backdropped out. It
always happens to Scott Hall, and so it was funny that Scott Hall did it to somebody else.
Well, Hall finally learned.
Yeah.
So we get Piper limping out to the ring. At this point, Scott Steiner is eliminated by Nash. But Buffer is late on every single intro. During the match, Buffer is like, now coming to the ring, Roddy Piper. But Piper's already been in the match for 3 minutes by this point.
Well, what was also screwy, too, was that last period goes off. So it's supposed to just be Piper and Hogan at this point. Piper comes out, and then Hogan takes so long that the production crew fuck up, and they put the clock back up on the screen as if Hogan wasn't coming out for another 2 minutes. And then Hogan, probably a good 3 minutes after he's supposed to be out there, wanders out with Dennis Rodman.
Right, because they have to stop and take pictures, and he's a complete babyface, this Hogan. This vile heel is signing autographs and posing for pictures, and Rodman's a babyface, and everybody loves him.
He did not let Rodman get outside of arm's reach of him for like a good 5 minutes. Because he had all these people taking pictures of Rodman, and so if Hogan's right there, he's going to be in all those pictures with them.
Yeah, he's got to photobomb every picture.
Yep.
Now, this is probably the first time that the crowd actually starts to come to life, and they're chanting for Sting. So as we've already established, the WCW team is down 1 member. So Sting, we know, is in the building. We see him at the end of this match. Where was he during the match?
Well, hiding up in the rafters. I actually have an idea. And I've actually figured out they did have a fourth person. However, their fourth person, it was a block of slow-moving ice. And Glacier just didn't get to the ring in time.
I'm going to help my employer. And he walked at the speed of Continental Drift. And by the time he got to the ring, it was time for Nitro.
I was going to say Nitro had started the next night already.
So Piper and Hogan are brawling on the outside. Crowd finally starts to come to life. Savage comes running out to come to Hogan's aid, and he nearly runs over Bill Apter. Poor guy, he's earning his money tonight.
And it's funny because he doesn't even get paid by WCW.
he gets a 50% discount on tickets. He doesn't even get press pass.
There you go.
Hogan shoots Piper into the ropes. Rodman pulls down the top rope, eliminating Piper. This leaves, so we've got Luger and Benoit against all four of the NWO. Apparently, Hall needed some help from Nash to hit the outsider's edge on Benoit. Benoit was not going up for this edge.
I think they just horribly mistimed it because I mean, this was Benoit's first pay-per-view main event, and even though I'm sure he knew that he was never going to get a match with Hogan, I'm sure he figured, if I sell well for Hall and Nash, they might say, hey, this is a guy that we could do a tag match against, or even a singles match again on a pay-per-view. And I'm sure he was out there wanting to show that they could trust him to not kick their ass, and he would go up for their moves, etc. And then this happened, and well, Benoit never really got a main event push until the bitter end.
No, I'm sure Bischoff was watching this in the back thinking, God damn it, that Benoit doesn't know how to work.
I like you used your Vince voice. Well, it wasn't even fully Vince, it was like half Vince, too.
Well, goddamn! I'm watching this match. This little guy, he's not big.
Yes, thank you, Vince. That was good. And this ended up as a replay of World War III, which was Lex Luger versus the entire NWO, and it ended up exactly like World War III, where Luger eliminated 3 of them in 15 seconds, and then got screwed at the end.
Yeah, there was only going to be one person making an actual pinfall in this match. I'll give you 2 guesses who it was. But since you already saw it, it came down to Hogan and Luger. Luger gets nailed by the spray paint can that Rodman had tucked away. Hogan just falls on a limp Luger for the pin, and that's the end of that. Okay. So now they can regroup, and they can challenge for the World Television title. The one goal that they had going into this.
Now, before we move on to the post-match shenanigans, I just want to close up this match and say that whole ending was such a fucking clusterfuck. It's like, they went so quickly. The finish went bang, 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 bang. They didn't have enough time to let it sink in. The announcers didn't even have time to get out a full sentence and to even mention that Luger was now so close. He was one person away from disbanding the NWO all by himself. It was like, he just submitted 2 people. He submitted Hall, he submitted Savage, he threw Nash over the top rope.
Yeah,
and
within seconds, by the way.
Yeah. Here he is. He's got one person to go, and Hogan's getting the rack next. And before he could count to 5, Hogan pinned him for the win.
Stupid.
Yeah. So the show is over, or is it?
Well, it's the end of the main event. Of course, that's it. That's the end of the show, right?
You think so? I've seen enough wrestling shows.
So
but then,
it's at this point that Sting decides to show up. Not during the match to save his friends, to save his company. He rappels from the ceiling after the match. The crowd loses their mind. This is the biggest pop for anyone all night.
The entire show, there was 200 people in, and all of a sudden, the doors open and 10,000 people came running in and began screaming with glee, because here comes their savior from the rafters. Here's Sting. And they went batshit crazy as Sting beat the crap out of Hall with his baseball bat. He beat the crap out of Nash. He beat the crap out of Savage. He gave all three the Scorpion Death Drop. And then there was one.
He challenged Hogan to come to the ring. Hogan comes to the ring. Sting drops the bat, turns his back on him, dares Hogan to assault him, dares Rodman to do something. And the two of them are frozen with fear. And then Hogan makes a move. Sting grabs him. He hits the slop drop. That's how we go off the air. And then the closing credits. Because this is uncensored, all the credits are just listing the first names of each staff member. Cameraman, Doug. Security guy, Jim. Media person, Phil.
There were like 15 people named Mike with no last name, no last initial. Just like, Mike did this, Mike did that. It's like, either one guy got a very good paycheck or...
Right. But Eric Bischoff gets a first and last name, so does Tony Schiavone.
Yeah, I think Keith, what the hell's his last name? Keith in the production truck?
Keith Mitchell.
Keith Mitchell, yeah. He got a last name. And it's like, other than that, everyone else was Mike, Bill, Joe, Bob.
Yeah. So after they had fought so hard to earn the ability to challenge for any match, 2 weeks later, as we mentioned, Randy Savage did challenge Prince Iake for the TV title, but that match ended in a no contest, completely negating this win.
Yes.
So what was the point?
Roddy Piper, who knows? They probably had an idea and then just dropped it.
I seem to recall going into this, the Piper's team was supposed to be John Tenta and I think Al Green and some other big jobber guy, but whatever happened to that?
No, so it was John Tenta. One of them was Roddy Piper's gopher. And then there was, I don't think it was Al Green, it was somebody else from the power plant. And because they did this all-time legendary horrible segment where Roddy Piper was going to find his team by fighting them. And it was like the crowd turned on it. And but the key was, and this is the craziest thing, that show, that segment, tripled the rating of what was on Raw. And on Raw, I think, was Sid versus Triple H in a WWF Championship match at the same time. And they got dwarfed in the ratings by Roddy Piper fighting schmucks off the street.
Oh, man. So, another thing, during the Nitro previous to this, they had pushed that Ric Flair and Arn Anderson were going to be with Piper, not as active participants, but as, being in their corner, during the main event. There was no Flair, there was no Arn Anderson. They just decided not to show up to the pay-per-view that night.
Well, they were busy filming the Spring Stampede commercial.
You think they were doing that live?
Well, I don't see why not. And then Mongo and Benoit rode their horses to the arena.
And because Flair and Arn's horses were old, they couldn't make it that far.
And
I don't
then
know.
The horses did jobs for the NWO as well.
Everybody goes to the glue factory.
Yeah.
So that is Uncensored 1997. We made it. In your retirement podcast, this is what you get, and you made it.
That's good. I tried once to listen to The Lapsed Fan, and I'm sure it's a fine podcast. I'm sure they're really nice people, but it's like they were reviewing WrestleMania 1, which went 2 hours, and the podcast was 3.5 hours long. I'm like, how the hell did you spend 3.5 hours talking about that show?
Well, Sheik and Volkov versus the U.S. Express, that probably took 45 minutes to discuss, because there's a lot of intricacies that go into that.
And Bundy versus Special Delivery Jones in the quote-unquote 8-second match or 9-second match. Yep.
Yeah. That requires half an hour. It's like the NFL pregame show or the Super Bowl the Super Bowl pregame show. It needs 8 hours of pregame coverage, that sort of thing. So, in any event, like we said at the onset, I don't know when we're going to be back. I don't know who the co-host is going to be. I'm going to try and give Aria, a couple of weeks off before I break down and ask her to come back. She's going to delete my contact information, I'm sure. So
block them on Facebook. Yeah.
But like I said, I do have someone in mind. Hopefully, this person will be getting in touch with me soon. Let's just wait and see. I'm not going to drop any names right now. Until then, this has been episode 4 of the Angry Marks Podcast Network. Go to AngryMarks.com for all of your pro wrestling news and mixed martial arts information. Aria, how can they get a hold of you?
If you even want to, you can follow me on the Twitter machine at TheReallyRealAW.
And if you have any questions, I have established an email address that you can send questions to. I don't know why you would want to. Maybe you want to petition to get Aria to be the full-time host. I don't know if that's going to happen. But if you want to give us suggestions as to shows that you want us to review, you can hit us up at angrymarksrewind@gmail.com. Nice and simple. You can also get in touch with me on Twitter at RowanUnra. And thanks again, Aria, for helping me out. And you have a wonderful rest of your week.
You as well. Thank you. People couldn't see this, but when you said that you can pick something, I pointed at my screen because I'm putting it right at each and every one of you listening to this. You can recommend what we watch next time.
See, what you've just done there, you said we, which includes you, which means you are committing to the next episode.
I meant more the royal we.
I see. You're speaking in like a general term.
Everyone can watch the show together and then come together to listen to 2 solid hours of podcasting. And we should have set off pyro after hour 1 and announced that this was the greatest hour in the history of wrestling.
I'm going to put an audio copyright label at the bottom of hour 1. Will that work?
Sounds good.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Holla. What the fuck am I watching?